Alright, so the question we had in the last lecture was, how do we solve this problem? How do we stop JavaScript from blocking the rendering process? Well, there are a few ways. Let's start at the most simple and obvious. If you've ever taken a Web Design 101 course, this is going to be very familiar to you. We just place links to external scripts at the bottom of our HTML body. And placing links at the bottom of your page is very similar, if not identical, to what you'd get if you actually listened for the DOM content loaded event and only ran your JavaScript then. I'll show you more what I mean later. While placing JavaScript resources at the bottom of the HTML remains a standard best practice, this method by itself can be suboptimal for eliminating render blocking scripts from the critical path. Why is this? Remember what it is we're trying to do here. We're trying to display content above the fold as quickly as possible. So when the user lands on your website, he sees, boom, exactly what you want him to see. And everything below the fold, below the screen, that can kind of happen in the background without the user even knowing before he scrolls down on the page, whether with his finger on a phone or scroll bar at the mouse. Right? That's what we're trying to achieve. But placing our JavaScript at the bottom of our file still means that we have to wait for that to be executed before the final render can occur. And sometimes you want that. Sometimes you want to pause the rendering process for very critical JavaScript resources. And in that case, continue to put your JavaScript files at the bottom. It is good in that instance. But sometimes for non-critical resources that can wait, why not delay their execution? So immediately the user can see that rendered content on the screen, and then in the background, before he even scrolls, you can then continue to build your site. Cool. I hope it's making sense. See you now. So, like I said, every step of the way, I want us to start assessing performance at 3 major milestones in the critical rendering path process. 1, I want to assess where the DOM content loaded event fires. 2, I want us to look at where the first meaningful paint occurs. And 3, I want us to look at the onload event, okay, which is when all the resources have been fetched and executed and done and fired. Now, you'll remember in one of our previous examples, we had this code in the background. I don't want to recode everything. Just to recap, it's a very, very simple HTML file here. We've just got our header tags. Then we've got our script tags. Okay, and we've got our first inline script saying console log inline 1. We then have an external script. To remind you, let's just look at what that is. We just changed the H2 color style to red. That's all we do. And then we console log external 1 to the screen. So that's our external 1 script. We've then got another inline script, and then we've got a 4th script tag, again referencing an external file. And this external file just changes the H3 tag, and we change its color to blue, and we then just console log to the screen external 2. Simple. Nothing, we've been through this example, we know what it's all about. And then we've got our final inline script, which just console logs inline 3. Simple. So this is our default approach where we place our JavaScript at the bottom of the page. And let's just now get those time events. Do you remember how to do it? Well, maybe pause the video. Think about it. I hope you gave it a good go. But let's do it together. So let's fire up our site. Here we go. Makes sense. The first thing I can see is that our external files have worked correctly. And if we go back to our code, what would we expect to see in the console? Well, the first thing is that we know that the JavaScript execution happens synchronously. So when the browser hits the first script tag, everything else is paused. Inline 1 should be console logged to the screen. It then hits our external 1.js file. And then it pauses everything below it, and it will console log external 1 to the screen. Our parser will then hit the next script tag, which is just console logging inline 2. It will then hit the external 2.js file. And finally, the parser will hit the last script tag, which just console logs inline 3 to the screen. So I'd expect the solution to be what? That's right, inline 1, external 1, inline 2, external 2, and inline 3. So if we go here and we inspect our document, and we go to the console, inline 1, external 1, inline 2, external 2, and inline 3. So this is all making sense. Now, to get those time metrics, let's go to the Performance tab and let's start profiling this process. So let's do that. And there we go. What I want to do now is I want to go into the event log. And what's really cool is we've got this filter. So we don't have to go and scroll down everywhere. We can just go, cool, or what is the DOM content loaded event? And we can see that happens at 167 milliseconds. Have you got that? 167.9 milliseconds. That's how long it took to fire the DOM content loaded event. Remember that number. Now, the meaningful paint. Well, again, it's really handy because we can just write paint on the screen. How long did that take? Well, if you click on this paint activity, you can see in the right hand side of the page that it actually gives you a display of what that paint did. Well, I'm actually in the way. So let me just remove myself quickly. Okay, maybe you can see that better now. It's at the right part of the screen. I'll zoom in a little bit. Can you see it? So that's not the paint we want because no color has been changed there, has it? What about the next one? The next one has only executed the very first external one JavaScript file. So it's still not quite what we want. If we go on to the last paint, we can see that that's exactly what we want the user to see. We want him to see the black header 1 tag. We want that header 2 to be changed to red and the header 3 to blue. So how long did that take? 200.4 milliseconds. Okay. Remember that number? And lastly, I want us to look at the load event. Let me just zoom out here again. And you can see if we look at our main tab, you can kind of see the load event happened at roughly just before 300 milliseconds. Because there are a lot of load events that happen. Bear in mind that this isn't the final load when we filter for this. There are lots of event loads that are happening, like when your JavaScript file gets executed, when your pass is finished, all that kind of stuff. So the one that we are interested in is this event load here at 281.4 milliseconds. Let me just lift it up so you can see here. Can you see it there? Let me just do this and then make this smaller, lift this up, and then you can see it. There you go. There's the event load at 281.4 milliseconds. Have you got that? Cool.